Hey everybody, this is my 40-gallon Purple Spotted Gudgeon Tank. You can see at least the silhouette of my gudgeon sitting right there front and center up near the surface. It thinks it's getting dinner, but it is about to undergo a water change. I've been putting off water change on this tank for a little while now, and tonight's going to be the night we get in there and do it. I don't know what it's going to involve once I actually get in there and start working on it. We're just going to have to play it by ear. I'm definitely doing the water change. I'm going to vac some of the debris and stuff off the bottom. It's got a sandy bottom, so there's not too much you can vac up. But there is some loose, uneaten fish food and stuff. I'll get that out of there. I'll see if I can pick any, dead vegetation out of there, anything like that. We're going to change the filters, maybe wipe the glass down if it needs it. I don't know. Let's just get started and see what happens. First of all, I need to get in the other room and get the siphon hose. The lights on this tank are homemade and they're really cheap. They're just little pieces of foam board with low budget LEDs stuck to them. So we'll see how it goes once the light is off the top, how well we can see in there. So I don't just open the valve and let it drain through the sink because of the level of where the faucet is in the sink. I actually unscrew it and I sit it down in the tub in the other room in the shower stall, and that low level allows me to get much more suction. So give me another minute. Now I can already see a thick mat of growth. I don't know, it's algae, cyanobacteria. It's that thick green stuff. And I wasn't kidding when I said there's a mat of it. I'm just getting a ton of growth. I don't know how well it's coming out again on the light, but I am just getting a ton of stuff scraped off the surface of these leaves. In the back here is where it's directly under those most intense amount of light and it's closest to the surface. I know it doesn't really come out well on video, but the plants in this tank are really thick all the way to the back glass. Well, I guess maybe, I don't know if it comes out on video or not. You can get the idea that it's pretty densely planted in there, but that dense planting is thorough. It goes all the way to the back of the tank, so once you start getting back in here, there's a little less water circulation. I've got a little more junk floating on the top in the back, some dead leaves, a little bit of uneaten floating fish food I put in there a few days ago that I didn't even know had not been eaten. And of course I get little pieces of the temple plant and stuff will break off and wind up just floating around the tank. They start developing roots and continue growing, but in weird floating parts of the tank. Now, you know what? That whole, well, can you see movement in the bottom right hand corner? Look, there's that little South American bumblebee jelly catfish. I'm actually going to pull this out right now. I don't need all that Java fern right there. So once again, Java fern for sale. I'll put my email down below if anybody's interested in aquatic plants. I've got a bunch of them for sale now. Alright, sorry about that. Had to get a bucket organized. I had something sitting on top of the bucket that I keep my spare plants in. So now I've got all this stuff in the back that has been uncovered. So I'm probably going to want to vac this a little more thoroughly than I'd originally intended. This siphon, for anybody that's familiar with using these, whatever brand you use, it's basically the same deal. It's not a very good gravel vac. It's more meant as a water changer and sort of just a generic siphon than it is for a gravel vac. But as I've said, for the sandy tank like this, I can't do too vigorous of a vac or it'll suck the sand right out of the tank. Like this piece right here is not even, I thought that was part of the Java fern, but that's actually a big chunk of the temple plant. Apparently got a lot of temple plant growing in the back of the tank too that I wasn't even aware of. Hang on a minute, I'm going to move the camera here. See him? That's my little South American bumblebee jelly catfish. No, I'm sorry, that's not my jelly. I had that bumblebee jelly for so long I just got used to saying that. That is just a regular old South American bumblebee catfish. There's so many different similar species. Boy, that gudgeon does not seem to like that little catfish. I wonder what that was all about. I've never seen him act this way. Maybe he's just stressed out because of the water change. Again, normally he doesn't act quite this stressed out during water changes. Let me see if I can set this tripod back down in an appropriate position. It's pretty close. Good enough. So now I'm debating whether or not I should move some of this Java fern here, because this again is a massive clump of it. Should I put some of that back where this little catfish is? He's got his little nose sticking out the front now. Let's see what we can do with some of this back here. First of all, I need to get rid of some of this stuff. It's so thick. So that's all temple plant. Break this piece off too. This is temple plant. So I will briefly at least have some pieces of temple plant available as well, because I'm not going to put this in another one of my tanks just yet. I'm going to go ahead and put this in my container in the other room where I keep the plants that I have for sale. So I'm going to put that in there right now, and then I'll be back. We're going to get another big chunk of that Java fern out of there today while I'm in here doing this. May as well. some of it. Alright, that's the rest of it right there. That's all one. Actually, that's not one. That is a couple of different plants that have all grown together. So we are just going to put some of this back, and then the rest of it is going to go in my container. So as I keep saying, I'm going to have a lot of Java Fern available here very soon. Well, pretty much right now, actually. So I'm going to have to come and do another water change on this soon, or hopefully maybe the filter will pick a lot of this stuff up. Now you can kind of see how I'm sort of putting these underneath the edges of rocks. You've got to be careful. If you do that in such a way where the rock is actually putting pressure directly on the rhizome and you're pinching the rhizome, it'll crush it and pinch it off and kill it, and eventually the rhizome will die. So getting it under there so that a few of the fronds, you know, the leafy part is pinched between the rocks, that's fine. And even if that leafy part dies off, the bulk of the rhizome will still be tucked away and it won't drift around or float away after it's kind of secured under there. But don't put the rock directly, and when I say rhizome, I'm talking about this sort of central main root column. That's actually the rhizome, and if you pinch that between the rocks, that will cut the circulation off and kill it. So let me go get these in a bucket. We're going to get that filter changed real quick, and then we'll get the tank started to fill back up. Alright, sorry about that. I had a bucket of plants get knocked over while I was in the other room. So this now just has a hang on the back filter like my '29 and various other smaller tanks. And this is actually still the original filters I put on there when I first started. That's all I do is I wrap a piece of batting around it. That is my filter. Yeah, I'm going to go reverse the water flow and we'll get it filled back up. Now, a lot of all that debris and detritus and everything that we stirred up from pulling all those plants out of there is going to be still in the tank. There's no way I got all of that with the gravel vac, and of course you can see how dirty the water is right now. But we're going to put a lot of water back in. We did a big, probably 60% water change, and by the time the filter gets up and running again, that'll start sucking all that stuff out of there. In fact, I'm going to pull some of this stuff off of the filter intake. It's already trying to get caught up in it. And I do have an old empty tank sitting on the floor right down there off to the right of the camera. If you wonder why I keep throwing stuff over there, I'm not just throwing it on the floor. There is a container over there. Almost tempted. In fact, I think I'm going to. One of the things you can do is use the gravel vac separately from this siphon. So while I've got the tank filling back up, I'm going to go ahead and get my gravel vac out and try to work on getting some of that filth out of here. So let me go get a bucket and my gravel vac. See, this is a lot more effective at removing, whether you're actually vacuuming the gravel or you're just trying to suck the detritus out of the water column. But as I've said with the sand bottom, you've got to be kind of careful. If you get a little too carried away, you'll actually just draw the sand right up. Just like that, and I'm probably losing sand in the bucket right now. Now, I'm obviously pulling water out at the same time I'm putting water in, so that is going to amount to a larger water change than we had originally thought about, because I'm pulling an additional 5 gallons of water out of here. So this is going to amount to probably about a 75% water change when it's all said and done. But I've said before, if you're not familiar with my videos, you're not familiar with my water and all that, I do have water that is pretty much the same coming out of my tap as it is in my tank. So I'm not putting the fish through any kind of real shock or anything by doing a massive water change like this. If you're not familiar with your water, or if you don't really know what's going on with your water hardness and your water chemistry, I really don't recommend doing really big water changes like this, because you can shift your tank's chemistry considerably. It might shift back in a day or two, but bouncing fish around like that is not good for them. Stability is always more important than perfection. So keep that in mind. If you're not really familiar with your water, don't do enormous water changes, because you really can have a negative impact on your aquarium. And that's another 5 gallons out. So I'm going to go put my siphon away and pour this bucket out. Didn't lose too much sand. There was a little tiny bit of black sand at the bottom of the bucket, but not a lot. And now it's just a matter of waiting for the tank to fill up. In the meantime, I'm going to get a paper towel and start wiping the glass down just to get the water off of the glass. And then once we've actually finished the water change and I've got the hose out of the tank for the last time and we're all done making sure there's not going to be any more drips or anything, then I go ahead and get the Windex out and we'll clean the glass off properly. Tank definitely fills faster when you're not draining water out of it at the same time. And this torn leaf here is really annoying me. Well, maybe if it's opened up a little more like this, we'll get to see the little bumblebee catfish a little more frequently. I can see him now. He's just under those rocks instead of buried underneath of all of the vegetation. But of course it's only a matter of time before the vegetation grows back in and he'll be right back to it and buried underneath of a dense sea of green, and we'll never see him again until I do this again. Every time the gudgeon kicks up stuff off the bottom from the corner, I realize just how much stuff is still in there to be kicked up. The water feels a little cool. Let me go and check the water temperature, make sure I got it set right. Yep, that was fine. Better safe than sorry. I've done water changes long enough now that I can basically just set my, turn the water to cold all the way on, and then I know where to position the hot water valve to give me the proper temperature. And you don't have to be precise. I used to really worry about it when I was new and I was doing water changes. I would get my thermometer out, and I would let the water in the faucet run until it was the exact same temperature as what's in the tank, and I don't worry about any of that kind of stuff anymore. I just get it up to where it feels like it's a comfortable room temperature water, and that's good enough. For one, you've got to look at the volume of water and stuff that's in the tank. Even if I were putting water in the tank that was, we'll say 5 degrees colder than the water that's currently in there, well, once that all mixes together, how much colder is that really going to be? Even if it was a 50% water change, you're only looking at a 2.5 degree difference. And then the rocks and the sand and the glass, that's all still retaining the temperature of the original water you had in there, so it will not take long at all for that temperature to come right back up. So I don't recommend just going willy-nilly and putting cold water in the tanks. You don't want the temperature to shift more than a few degrees during a water change. But that's just it. A few degree shift in water temperature during a water change is not going to hurt your fish at all. In fact, a few degree drop in temperature during a water change is actually good for your fish. A lot of times that'll encourage them to start spawning or showing spawning behavior. It's effectively simulating fresh influx of rain. It can simulate spring rains, or depending on where in the world you are, you know, what season you get your rainy season. But that colder fresh water coming in can certainly trigger your fish into spawning behavior. So don't sweat a couple of degrees, especially if it's a couple of degrees downward. It isn't going to hurt your fish at all. So we are pretty much full. I always just try to make sure I get the water up above that black line. We can turn it off. Well, those lights aren't much, but they get the job done. So let's get a paper towel and do one final wipe of the tank. Love that squeaky sound when you're using Windex to clean your glass up. You know you're going to have a good, clear aquarium when you're done. So there you go, everybody. Doesn't look like the gudgeon's none too happy, but he'll get over it. As soon as I get done this video, I'm going to go around and start feeding everybody, so he'll get over it really quickly once he gets a little bit of food in his belly. So thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful or enjoyable or something, but that was an uninterrupted water change on my gudgeon tank. Don't forget, lots of plants available. Check my email down below if you're interested. Thanks again for watching this one. Sorry it was such a long video, but that's how it goes sometimes. When you're doing a lot of work on a tank, it takes time sometimes. So thanks again, and I will see you next time.